here we go. Wonderful. Okay, we are all set. Welcome all of those people that are tuning in. I'm here with our lovely folks of the Winter 2024 Residency, um, brought to you by Studio 210. I'm super excited to hear what all these lovely people have to say today and get some insight into our artist's creative process, and then also hear from our guest mentor about what's been going on, what this has been like. And so, yes, I'm Lydia, as I may have mentioned, and I would love to pass it off to David. Introduce yourself, tell us what this has been like and what you do in the world and in your artistic life.
Hi, thanks, Lydia. Thanks for passing that on. Hello, everyone. My name is David Herrera. In Spanish, David Herrera. I use both. I'm a choreographer based in San Francisco, Lonely Territory. And I've had the pleasure of working professionally in the dance field for, oh gosh, I think I'm moving into 25 years at this point. Um, and I have a company named David Herrera Performance Company that's based here in San Francisco as well. We are moving into our 17th year. And my company very specifically centers the Latinx and Latina experience. And we do work about that. Besides the dance portion of the company, we also have community programs. So we have a mentorship program of our own called Latin Extensions, which is it's a one-year program that we offer for emerging artists. And then the other program that we carry is called Latinx Hispanic Dancers United, and that has some sub branches as well. This is a national initiative with many artists from across the country that are part of this. And so outside of that, I'm really excited about being part of Studio 210's residency this season. So thank you, Deborah, for asking me to be a part of this. What I've really been enjoying about this process is that it's slightly different than my own mentorship. This is really focused on the artist and the creativity process, the creative process, excuse me. And so I get to have a little bit of both right now within mentorship. I get to do all the capacity building with my own program, and then I get to do some of this with these two amazing artists who you're about to hear from in just a second. I don't want to take too much more time because this is not about me. This is about the two artists who are in residence. So I like to pass that off back to you, Lydia, and so maybe we can get an intro. Oh, and by the
Yeah.
way, I do use he, him as my pronouns if anybody wanted to know that.
Wonderful. Oh, thanks so much, David. We're really glad to have you on board for this round, and I'm really excited to see the differences that you bring to this process that, we haven't seen before in the residency. But yes, as you mentioned, we're here with our two wonderful artists. Emma, would you please introduce yourself and tell us maybe a little bit about what you're doing or what you're working on? Oh, we can't hear you, Emma.
Sorry about that. I was just gonna say it's funny that I'm nervous, but I can't even see anyone that's watching. And then, of course. But hi, I'm Emma Andre. I am one of the artists in residence this winter at Studio 210. I moved to the Bay Area about 6 or 7 months ago from New York. And before that, I was living and studying in Boston at the Boston Conservatory. I'm a choreographer, dancer, and teacher. And I've been working a lot on my own work as well as my work with my partner, Henry Winslow. We are creating and performing a lot of duet projects recently, which is exciting. But yeah, for this residency, I'm creating a piece centering my experience in childhood. I'm sort of using music and costuming as a catalyst for telling the story of the freedom I felt in my childhood, the contradictory expectations put on young women during their adolescence, um, and then the sort of performance that comes through out of accepting those contradicting expectations, and then the deconstruction of these ideals culminating in a resurrection of one's authentic self. So that's what I've been working on.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm excited to hear more about that. But first, let's hear from our second resident, Andrea. Tell us who you are, what you're doing.
Hello, my name is Andrea Rodriguez, and I was born and raised here in San Francisco. I'm going to take these off. I was born and raised here in San Francisco and in the Mission District, Bernal Heights, Diamond Heights, that whole area.
Here we
And
go.
my work, say what?
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. My project is an excerpt for a larger project I'm working on called La Ruma No Para, a salsa love story about growing up in San Francisco that's about love, loss, and addiction. The piece that I am specifically working on is dedicated to Yamaya, which is a Yoruba deity who is represented by the ocean. She's the mother of all mothers, and I'm paying homage to her, but looking at how the ocean, how the beach is a place and a source of healing. And my project has been a whole like 360 for me in terms of like how I have witnessed and seen this place of salvation by going to the beach and praying and enjoying the beauties of just the waves and the meditation it is to just be at the beach and what comes from that. And I'm also, my question is like, how do we heal? How do you heal? What is your process for that in dealing with pain and dealing with love, dealing with loss, and in dealing with heartbreaks and joy, and when you're in love, right? So all in a nutshell, my process has been an interesting experience and how that represents for me. So
Wow, that's awesome. Um, Wonderful. Thank you so much. Love those little nuggets that we got from both of you. David, would you like to take us into our next set of thoughts or
Yes.
inspirations?
So you both already started talking a little bit about your projects for the residency, but as we all know in the dance world, a project has many steps. It takes a lot from the initial idea, which lives in our head, to the creative process, to fine-tuning and finessing, and then eventually presenting. But with that said, I I'd like to ask both of you, and maybe we'll just, Emma, we'll start with you and then move on to Andrea. Um, I'd like to ask both of you, have you found it, have you found the residency useful to your process for your specific works? We're a month into the residency. For those of you who are watching, we're only a month in, but they have had multiple rehearsals at this point, uh, twice a week for the last several weeks. So I'd like just to hear what has happened between the initial proposal of applying to the residency and what has happened in the last month for you within your process. Emma?
Yeah, thank you, David. Great question. I'm a very sort of visual person, like in terms of creating a concept or finding inspiration for a piece, I visualize it. And so I had created this playlist of music and I was visualizing this piece and this narrative, and it was really living in here. And then finally getting to be in the space and sort of bring it to life has been so inspiring. And I've actually found, sometimes when you have such vivid visualization, then you get into the space and you're like, well, I can only do so much. Um, and that can be frustrating. But here I've actually found like I can do more than I thought I would be able to. And there's a lot of just pieces in the space, like these big wooden blocks that I've ended up utilizing in this costume rack. And I've sort of like started building this set that I didn't even think about in the initial proposal. And so it's really cool the way that the space has inspired and like physically shaped where the work is happening in the context of the piece. Um, it's also amazing just to have access to 6 hours of studio space a week. That's something that I would not be able to do without this residency. And I don't know if I said this explicitly, but I'm creating a solo. And so when you're creating a solo, like the most expensive part of the process is getting the space to work on it. And so it's been really such a treasure. And I'm so grateful to be able to have this room to work in. Yeah.
Thank you, Emma. Andrea, same question. How have you found the residency useful for your process, considering especially because you have a slightly different experience that you're doing a section for a larger work in progress.
Yes, well, I definitely second what Emma's saying. Being able to have studio space to be able to work is just, it's so precious, especially in the city. And especially too, because this is also a bit of a solo work for myself. And I think being able to like dive deep into the process, like it takes time. I feel like I finally have my engines, rolling. But when I had initially proposed was like, I think like two or three ideas, and then I've narrowed it down to one. And I'm glad that it's kind of come down to one because I can really dive into it. And so it's like, this is where I'm at, where I'm like sleeping, eating, and constantly thinking about this. It's like I have, these 2 months to be able to really dive deep. And I love that. And, pressure for sure, but like a good pressure, right? To be able to just have this time to delve into the work. So having like I've been like recording my process, and so I started to like look back at where I was back at the beginning of the week in January into where I'm at right now is like a completely different place. Like I feel more focused, and I have to say also being able to have you, David, as a mentor to help me like hone in that process also makes it even more. I feel like you're like my teddy bear that I can just so thank you.
Well, thank
Like
you. Well, here's you're leading me into the next idea, which is what what is it like to have somebody else involved in your process? Because most of the time as artists, we step into the studios and to creative process where we are the lead. We are the ones doing that. And whether we have other people in our work or not, it's irrelevant. You could because usually we still are like we're the ones leading everything. But here you're in a space where somebody else is talking to you about what you're doing. And I can say that I've also had the privilege of seeing both of you in the studio, seeing some of this last week. So I got to see some behind the scenes work and had a little bit more of my hands in the masa, as we say in Spanish. Uh, but what is that like for you? Are there any new insights or aha moments that have been happening for you with having this relationship with somebody else outside of your process? Andrea, why don't we start with you this time and then pass it on to Emma?
So yes, I think for like a solo work, like, right, like you could get like lost in the sauce, stuck in your head, and just I was just like really in my head. I was so stressed out last week. And then when you came, oh my God, you just helped me to kind of gel everything that I was just thinking. And you really, I think, you're really good at being able to see like where I was at and where I needed to kind of glue everything, right? So having that I think has been helpful for me, especially because of the time constraints. We're going to be showing this work in the next couple of weeks, and if you had come in, like if I was at this process maybe like the week before the show, like I would have been stressed out. But now I have time to like really kind of shape it and mold it, and that's what I've been doing this week. So it's been very helpful and effective, and I love being able to collaborate with folks, and I feel like you're coming in as a mentor slash not collaborator, but like a collaborator because you're just able to be like a soundboard for me to help me to kind of see things that I might not have been able to see. And then when we have our meetings, the questions that you pose to me, like look at this work from like the stage, look at it from behind the curtain, like looking at it from these different angles, like having somebody to just talk to about this it's helpful in my own personal artistry. I appreciate it, and it helps me to be better at what I do. So
Awesome. Emma, what is your experience with having somebody else poking around?
Well, I want to echo a lot of what Andrea is saying. Like your mentorship for me has been invaluable. Like it's really, I've it's helped me so much in the process. One of like the huge takeaways that I've had from our conversations has been in the first couple weeks of the residency, like establishing the difference between generating and creating and then rehearsing. And that, you know, especially when I have this whole thing visualized in my head and I'm excited about it, and then I get a little bit out and then I try to rehearse it and make it good before moving on. Um, I was really kind of stepping on my own toes. Whereas, you know, you sort of gave me permission to like, no, just keep going and just get it all out. And then you can refine it and fine tune it. And the further you go, it will come back to inform what you've already made. And that has like helped me so much because now I have something that I'm excited about that I can fine tune, you know, and I think it's just wonderful that I've been able to become so comfortable in conversations with you in just the last month. Like it's really, really wonderful to have someone that I'm comfortable with that cares about what I want the work to be and what I'm trying to say and isn't trying to put your own narrative onto my piece, but you're really there working to make sure that you're allowing or that I'm speaking clearly to the audience and getting across what I care about and what I want to say. And that is super meaningful. Yeah.
Andrea, I see you nodding your head. Do you want to add on to that?
Yes, no, just that I feel the same way. It's like you're a soundboard, and that's important because I've been in residencies where maybe I've had these ideas, but they haven't fully been fleshed out, and it's helpful when you can look at your colleagues and peers and get advice or just being able to get the support. You know, um, it's been a really beautiful journey to have that. So as part of this program. So
Were either one of you nervous about that, about having somebody else, as I said, poking around
I
into the
was
process? Yeah, go ahead.
I was so nervous to meet you. I we had never met before the residency and I was very nervous. I was like, "Oh, what if he doesn't like it or if he thinks it's bad or, you know, and then I met you and I was like, "Oh, we're having fun. This is great." But I was very nervous initially.
Oh, that's really funny. Well, you know, the thing that I think is great is that the residency is about you. It's not about me or even Deborah when Deborah is doing it. It's about y'all and what you are all trying to get across. And as artists, obviously, we all work very differently. What has been really interesting for me on this end has been finding a way to help you down your journey, but in a way that is catered to you. It's very much couture to you, um, if you want to think about it that way. But at the same time, also making sure that you're getting your goals right, that you're hitting. For those of you watching or listening, you know, every week I'm like, what are your goals for next week? What are you trying to get at? You know, what are you missing? And then a series of questions always come up as we have conversations, right? Um, have there been any moments were where you found yourself going like, well, that doesn't make sense to me, but what do I do with that? Right?
I think that thinking about like, you know, your feedback, it's definitely like, you know, like Emma has said, like, you know, I feel like um, you're listening, you're hearing, and then things that I feel like I've been trying or playing with have been kind of going back to like doing like some performance art stuff and like really kind of playing with some of that work, which I haven't done in a long time. So it feels really good to and I was, I think, maybe nervous about sharing that with you because I was like, this is very raw. Like I just kind of wrote it the other day and here I am right now working on this. And so that was I felt like yeah, I was like almost like you were like, no, like work on it a little bit more and here's how we could shape it and think about this. And so that and for me doing some of that has always been like a lot of fun for me as an artist, especially incorporating spoken word and whatnot. So no, I feel like you're pushing us and you're challenging us to think outside of the box and to play with the box. So
Emma, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking like I've experienced like the opposite of what you were talking about, David, with there have been things that you've said or mentioned or questioned me about in rehearsal, and then I'll sort of sit on it for the week and I'll come back the next week and I'll be like, "Wait, this makes so much sense." Like that's the experience that I've been having of like it's just bringing up things that it just really feels like everything that we've been talking about and all of the questions you ask me and like the sort of threads we follow in our conversations have just made the work stronger and like made the integrity and the intention of the work stronger as a whole. Yeah.
Well, you both have while you're both, there's overlap between both of your residencies, right? You're both doing solo work. You both are using uh different modalities of artistic expression, movement, music, acting. Um, and I'm not sure that you even knew that about each other, that you had all these these things in common within your work. So I think it just happens to be that you're going to be paired up quite nicely with one another in that direction. Uh, but with it, even though you have these overlaps first, um, you also have very distinct points of views about what you're doing and the reason you're doing it, right? I think one of the questions I posed to you both on our very first meeting, Andrea, when I met you in person for coffee, and then Emma, when you and I first met online, the very first questions I asked to both of you is, who are you doing this work for? You know, who are you trying to talk to, and who are you inviting into the conversation, right? So with that in mind, for those of you listening, I'd like to ask both of you, and Emma, we can start with you this go round. What do you want the audience to understand or take away? Or is it still being developed? Do you know exactly what that is? Or are you just leaving it open and letting people take what they need?
Yeah, I kind of hesitate to be explicit before I show it to someone about what I want them to take away, but
I'm the same way. I understand that.
right.
Yes.
But like, let's not gatekeep. I think what I want people to feel is like ideally um a sort of healing for their inner child. If I can wish that I'll leave it sort of vague and just say that. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Andrea?
um, that's really interesting, Emma, that you said that, wow. Because my question is like, like, how do you heal? Like, how, like, that's, you know, and, and so that's what I'm proposing. And then I'm also sharing, that in my process as well. So,
So what's really interesting, again, what I think is going to be interesting is the audience without you ever meeting each other or talking to each other about your projects, you're both hitting on something big about this idea of healing. And you're approaching it from two different locations. Um, which I think is going to be quite exciting for an audience member to be in the same conversation, but hear it very differently from two different points of views, right? Um, and that also, I think, is going to inform each of your own works once you get to see the other person's, right? It won't probably affect what you're doing now within the residency, but further down the line, it might give you something else. And then I hope obviously that the two of you talk to each other about what that is like and maybe how you are finding uh, uh, roadmaps into that process and then into that question of how do you heal, or what are you trying to heal is could be another question, right? Um, so anyhow, this is really, really great. Are there any are there any concerns about the residency for either one of you as you're moving through it? It could be about your own work. It could be about limitations, as Emma was bringing up earlier, the idea of limitations. You know, it could be about, you know, how much, Andrea, you also were hitting on that your proposal initially had three big ideas and you brought it down. So are there anything still that feel ambiguous or amorphous, and you're trying to find how to bring that back into center? Yeah, Andrea, let's start with you.
Wow, well, that's really interesting. And I'm super excited, Emma, because I feel like it's like these like juicy moments, like, you know, what you were saying, David. And so that feels really good. I think maybe I was like wondering like what you were going to be doing in the space, but like that helps to be like, oh, okay, like, you know, in camaraderie, right? And as a society, this is where we are right now. You know, there's so many aspects of it. But as far as uh, what was the question again, David?
That's okay. I was asking if there were still some things that feel unsure or
Oh, and sure.
concerns that were still happening with you. And it could be about anything. It could be about the concept. It could be about the space itself, any limitations you're feeling. You know, I mentioned that at the beginning you shared how there was three big ideas and you kind of honed that down. Is there anything still out there that you're feeling you need to like uh, uh, cattle ranch in to yourself?
Well, I think it's just time in general. I am getting a brand new song made for this. And so I'm on a crunch with my musicians to make sure it gets done on time. And then I told them, I was like, hey, look, if this is where we are, this is where we are. And I'm okay with that too, if the song is like half done. Well, hopefully not. So, but those are, I mean, more production themes like I have some ideas for how I want to design the set to give it that look and feel. So just, you know, it's all just kind of production questions. And then making sure that I have enough time in between for lines and for, you know, refining the choreography. My only concern right now is time. So that's all. No biggie.
Emma, anything for you?
For me, I think the biggest thing is it's a 20-minute solo, and I am trying to be like dancing. And so the endurance and like being able to like embody different characters and like maintain that performance quality and that through line over the course of that sort of duration. Like I've never had to hold anything on my own for that long before in a performance. And I'm super excited for the challenge, but I definitely know it is a challenge and it's something I'm working towards. Now that I have the draft of I have the whole 20 minutes sort of choreographed, and I'm just working on like getting it to the point where I can really perform, which I'm excited about. And I've also been working a little bit with text and like a monologue within the piece. And David and I were just talking in our meeting this morning about the performance of that and the physicality and just more on acting and using text and reading text in the piece. I have much more experience dancing than I do acting. So it is proving to be a challenge, but I'm excited for it. I feel very optimistic about the challenges, but I also know they're there.
Um, I wanted to ask you all to do a little bit of backtracking, so to speak. What what attracted you to the residency? Obviously, there's a free space that comes along with the residency, but and you were both already thinking about these new works. Uh, were there any other things that brought you into the residency that you found compelling, and kind of forced you to say like, okay, I'm going to apply. I'm going to do this, right? And Lydia, I don't remember the number, and you may have the number of how many people applied. So just know that there was a good amount of people who applied to this. Do you remember that number, Lydia?
This cycle, I believe we had a really robust turnout of about 25 applicants.
So out of 25, the two of you got this, right? So that A says a lot about your proposal and also about the ideas that you brought forward. But yeah, I'd like to hear like what was it about the Studio 210 residency specifically that maybe brought you in or it kind of made you want to do this? Andrea?
So what brought me into applying was the fact that, well, there was lots of things. That you have 2 months to develop something wherever it's at, mentorship, having obviously studio space, funding, being in this location, which is like the old Sears building, which is like a historical kind of like space, right? My parents who grew up on 24th and Folsom, my mom was saying, she was like, oh yeah, we used to go shopping there with the family when it was like the Sears building. So just like the history behind it, but definitely the support that the residency brings, I think, were some of the things that really attracted me to applying.
And Emma.
Yeah, I actually, before I moved to San Francisco, or to Oakland, but the Bay Area, before I moved to the Bay Area, I was living in New York City, in Brooklyn, and I had been talking to some people out here, and I had spoken to Liz Fain, who's a wonderful choreographer that's been in the Bay Area for a long time. And she mentioned Deborah Slater's residency. I'd actually had someone I'd known in the Bay Area do it before, and so I was already sort of curious about it. And then I applied before I even moved to the summer residency the cycle before this one. And um, I didn't receive it, obviously, but Deborah offered to call me and give me advice and critique about, what the panel had to say about my application. And I was like, oh, wow, like that is so valuable. And so I had a wonderful phone call with her that lasted like probably an hour. And she was just so warm and so helpful and, gave me a lot of great advice that I then took and applied once again. And very thankfully, I've been able to do it now. Yeah, and like Andrea was saying, just the resources that you're provided as a part of this residency is really like such a treasure. But yeah, it was that conversation with Deborah that I was like, oh wow, I'm definitely going to keep applying until I get this because it seemed like a really wonderful opportunity.
Well, I hope that it wasn't disappointed that it wasn't Deborah this cycle that was doing the mentorship.
No, you could never be a disappointment, David. You're awesome.
Well,
Yes, David. Yes, your treasure.
well,
Yeah.
thank you, Lydia.
Pleasant surprise.
I've been hogging the questions. I'll pass it back to you to see if there's anything that you'd like to ask or add on.
Oh, I mean, I've been loving listening to all of the things you guys have been talking about and having come into this conversation with next to no information about what the projects you are working on besides, the 3 sentences that I asked you to send me. It's been really great to hear more about your working process and the thoughts and the ideas that you're looking at. I wanted to pass along a few comments from Deb, who's actually watching. Um, she's been commenting a few times. She would like you to note that the Sears building where you're working is in ladies' lingerie. It's one of her favorite things to pass along about Studio 210. Um, and then I'll echo what she's saying in that it's been interesting listening to 2 different versions of self-discovery and how different aspects of life both hinder and support us as we go. And then just pinging on, yes, all the other things you guys have been talking about, been really, really wonderful to listen to. And if any viewers have any other questions that you'd like to put in the chat, we'll go ahead and read those in the next couple moments. But yeah, it's been really great. Are the things you guys have been working on for the residency? I know that Andrea, you mentioned this is kind of one in a series of explorations on this topic, and I don't know where. I guess the question is this an idea you've had for a long time that you're kind of finally digging into, or has this been one of a series? Do you envision this project living beyond the residency? Um, what is the lifespan of the kind of thought you're dealing with right now? Andrea, do you want to start?
Sure. So I am definitely sinking my teeth into it. And I think I've gone deeper than I expected. And it's been sort of, like I said, like a full circle experience where things make more sense, that like why I have chosen this element of healing, of the ocean, and what Yamaya brings. Um, so, and I had these like aha moments, like crazy, right? As I'm working on this, like I said, I'm like sleeping, eating, thinking, all of like of this work. And so I find myself definitely in a space of uh, I'm only like scratching the surface, and there's so much more to like tap into. But yes, this work, like, and this is why I wanted to do this residency, is that it would allow me to be able to um, take it into like the larger production, which I feel super strong and confident of, like having this element be part of this larger project that I'm working on. So, hey, Deb.
Love it.
Thank you. And also, sorry, little side note, my cousin actually rehearses in the space on Fridays. So I've like run into her. My cousin is Vanessa Mosqueda. So that's been really cool too. Just like, hey, so.
Oh, amazing. Oh, I love it. Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing so much. Emma, what about your project?
Yeah, so the conception sort of came about from listening to this song by Donna Summer called MacArthur Park, which is so awesome. And I was like listening to it, just like bored at my kitchen table, and I was like, oh, what if? And then I like visualized this whole like dramatic dream sequence section. And then I was like, oh, and what if this came before? And what if that came before? And so it really came from the music. And this sort of epiphany happened about a month before the applications opened for the residency. And so I knew I wanted to apply, and I had been sort of thinking about it and pondering it and like, oh, like what would I want to make? And then this idea came over me, and I just got like obsessed with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, and then this song will be the opener, and this will be that, and I'll wear this costume, and I'll do this. And like, definitely some of one of the sections, there's like four sections in the piece, and one of the sections is pulled from an improvisation that I did probably like a year and a half ago, that I had recorded. And I was like, oh, this needs, like, I had been looking for a place for it to live. And I was like, oh, this needs to live here now. And so I was really excited to find somewhere to bring that back into my process and reset the improvisation and sort of edit it to work within the context of the piece. But yeah, I would love for it to continue living on after this, but I'm also a bit of like a scatterbrained choreographer where I'll get an idea like that, and then the next proposal I'll submit for something will be like a totally different idea, still within the themes of like, identity and always a lot of focus on music and lyricism for me recently. But yeah, I sort of like bop from one thing to the next as it sort of calls me. And also, hi, Deb.
Wonderful. Well, I love it. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about at all, or a question that, something you want to talk about that we haven't asked the right question, about your project or the process or anything else that you'd like to share with anyone listening? I'll leave it open. Anyone can
I
respond.
I would say if you're interested, like if you're watching this and you're interested in applying to the residency, like do it, because like I said, even when I didn't receive a spot in the residency, it was so valuable just to have that conversation and that feedback with Deborah. And so I would just say encourage people to apply, because it's really wonderful, because even if you don't get it, you still get a lot out of it.
Awesome. I love that endorsement. Andrea, anything on your end that you'd like to share about process or residency?
Sure. I agree. I think that, yes, it's like a short amount of time to create work, but the pressure, allows you to like grow as an artist. So if you're looking to develop your work and you want support and mentorship, this is definitely a good way to go to just get some ideas off the ground and to see where they flourish and do it, apply. You have nothing to lose. Even in applying, yes, you are gonna, even in the questions that get asked, right? This is just for any application in general. They always help you to really think clearly about your ideas. So I always recommend just in general, apply for things because you'll see where your work can get like stronger and then you have a good base to work with when you do get that opportunity to develop your work.
Wonderful advice. Love it.
And then
David,
I
go
would
ahead.
throw in that in this residency, what makes this residency slightly different is that you get to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, right? A lot of times residencies you get and you work on your own. But this comes with, and this is a good thing, but it's going to sound strange the way I'm going to say it. It comes with a forced relationship. So,
Yes.
but with the goal of getting you across that finish line that you set for yourself, right? So I was thinking about like how different it must be for you all to go from having these thoughts in your mind and in your head and probably also in your body to finally going into a space and letting some of this out, right? It must feel in some way cathartic. I can understand as a creator myself. But with residency, especially when you're starting to put something together, and whether you're emerging or mid-career, all this allows you to, as you said, Andrea, it allows you to let it to start to flourish and grow and develop. And and then this garden starts to bloom, and then you start to create the pathways in the garden. You start to say where certain things are going to go and when you're going to eliminate certain things. So it's this is my perspective, at least also from seeing it from the outside with both of you. I've enjoyed how much everything has flourished for both of you in just 4 weeks. It's amazing how much has happened in 4 weeks that I'm so excited to see what's going to happen within the next month and then eventually into the presentation that you're going to be doing and sharing with the audience. I'm stoked about the next 4 weeks because you're both in a place already that you know where you want to do what you want to get at and you're working hard to get there. And I think this is one of those things that folks don't know about what happens behind the scenes, right? And this is what's been happening. And there's been a lot of like, oh, yes, no, oh, I'm nervous. Oh, no, this is great. Like, and if they could get glimpses of that, I think they would make it more interesting. But this is part of that glimpse. So I'm just going to say that. All right. Well, Lydia, I'm going to turn it back on to you.
Yeah, that was wonderful. And as you said, David, this whole conversation is a part of a glimpse into the process. And I'm excited to see the final presentation at the end of February. March 1st and 2nd is the official presentation. For those of you listening, tickets are now on sale. Will be a live stream event and an in-person event. So go ahead and grab your spot. I'll post those links in the chat. And otherwise, thank you so much, everyone on screen, for having a wonderful, exciting, and interesting conversation. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'm going to end our stream here. Have a lovely day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.